Today we are analyzing an article about YouTube's upcoming 2027 policy that will require creators to maintain 10 million Shorts views every 90 days to keep earning short-form ad revenue. And, right off the bat, the submitted piece does an excellent job laying out the factual mechanics of this new policy.
Yeah, it really does. The facts are all there, very clearly stated.
Right, but our focus for this critique is going to be on elevating the piece. We want to take it from just a standard news summary into, a highly resonant analytical deep dive, specifically for its creator-focused audience.
Exactly, because this audience already knows the basics. They live and breathe this stuff.
They do. So, jumping into the first area for improvement, the article accurately outlines the new policy, but misses a vital opportunity to deeply analyze the mathematical reality facing these smaller creators.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's missing that ground-level perspective.
Right, because right now the weakness is that the piece relies on somewhat generalized statement. It notes that 10 million views is, quote, a lot to hold every single quarter, and calls it a real wall.
Which is true, but it's just so broad.
Exactly. And it contrasts this against YouTube's macro statistic of 200 billion daily views, but it stops short of illustrating the actual day-to-day scale of the problem for the individual creator. So the severity of the situation ends up feeling a bit abstract.
It really does. I mean, when you're writing for an audience whose entire livelihood depends on these metrics, just throwing around a massive number like 10 million without breaking it down, it just causes the brain to gloss over it.
Yeah, it sounds like monopoly money at that point.
Right. So my suggestion here is to ground that abstraction. The writer needs to illustrate exactly what a rolling 10 million views per 90 days threshold looks like in daily practice for, just an average mid-sized channel.
So how would they do that? What are some concrete examples of putting that in text?
Well, providing a hypothetical breakdown right there in the text would immediately solve this. For instance, the author should point out that 10 million views in 90 days equates to over 111,000 views every single day.
Oh, wow. Yeah, when you say it like that, it hits different.
And if you break it down by upload frequency, it becomes even more stark. Say a creator only posts shorts 3 times a week. That means each video needs to hit nearly 260,000 views consistently.
Just to say monetized?
Exactly. Adding this specific math sharply highlights that wall mentioned in the text. It takes a dry statistic and turns it into a visceral, relatable challenge for the reader. Suddenly, it's not a platform policy. It is a daily quota.
Right.
When you tell a creator they need 250,000 views per video, you aren't just giving them news, you're giving them their new reality. It forces the reader to look at their own analytics dashboard and realize just how far away they actually are from that number.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Okay, sure.
Because looking at the source material, the author did include a reference to Kotaku, right? And Kotaku described the situation as a wall specifically for mid-sized creators.
Yeah, they did quote that.
So if we force the author to do all this granular division and, mathematical breakdown, aren't we risking turning a fast-paced news update into kind of an accounting ledger? Might that bog down the narrative momentum?
I see what you're saying, but I'd argue the math is actually the core of the story here, not a distraction from it.
How so?
Well, because the listener persona is deeply invested in the creator economy. For them, the math is the emotional hook. Saying it's a wall is just a metaphor, but saying you need 111,000 views every single morning before you even eat breakfast just to keep your monetization, that's a thriller.
That's true. It makes it very urgent.
Right. It shifts the tone from a distant corporate mandate to an urgent, on-the-ground reality. And we also have to think about the nature of a rolling 90-day window.
Oh, the rolling aspect, yeah.
It's not a flat quarter where you reset to 0 on day 1. A rolling window means that every single day, your views from 91 days ago drop off your total.
Ouch. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So if a creator had a viral hit 3 months ago that brought in 2 million views, they literally wake up one morning and those 2 million views just vanish from their qualification metric. They have to replace them immediately just to tread water.
That sounds absolutely exhausting.
Exactly. And if the writer unpacks the math to show that kind of daily pressure, the reader physically feels the exhaustion of that treadmill.
Yeah, it illustrates how one slow week or, just taking a vacation can completely strip a creator of their monetization status.
Which naturally leads us to ask, Why would YouTube put its creators on that kind of brutal treadmill in the first place?
Right, which brings us to our second big critique, the transition between the safety of long-form revenue and the panic over shorts requirements creates a slight disconnect in the narrative regarding YouTube's overall monetization ecosystem.
Yeah, I noticed that too. There's a bit of a gap there.
Yeah, the weakness is really in the section titled, What Actually Changes and What Doesn't. It isolates the assurance about long-form revenue from the broader strategy shift that YouTube is enforcing.
They treat them like two totally separate things.
Exactly. By treating the pause in shorts revenue and the continuity of long-form revenue as two separate mechanical facts, the piece misses the chance to connect them thematically as a deliberate platform strategy.
It is such a common pitfall to just list facts as bullet points when reporting platform updates, like fact A is about shorts, fact B is about long form.
Right, just a laundry list.
But the real value add of a great analytical piece is showing how A and B are actually just two sides of the exact same coin.
So what is the suggestion here to fix that flow?
The author should intertwine the mechanics of the policy with the platform's underlying motive. They need to explicitly frame how YouTube is deliberately bifurcating its ecosystem, separating long-form stability from short-form virality.
Okay, I like that. So what are some concrete examples of how they could rewrite this section?
Well, instead of simply stating long-form pay stays put, the author can juxtapose the two sets of new entry requirements right next to each other.
Put them side by side.
Exactly. You have 8,000 watch hours in a year for long form versus a massive 20 million views in 90 days for shorts.
That contrast is crazy when you say it out loud.
It is. The author could use this direct contrast to show the reader that YouTube is treating shorts as an aggressive, highly conditional engagement tool for top performers while treating long form as the stable foundation.
It makes me think of a corporate employment structure.
Oh. How so?
Like, YouTube's policy is essentially treating long-form content like a steady salary and shorts like a high-stakes, volatile commission job.
Oh, wow, yes.
Right? In a salary job, you put in the hours, you build institutional knowledge, and you have a safety net. But in a commission job, you are only as good as your last month's sales. If you don't hit your quota, you don't get paid. Do you think explicitly using that kind of framing, salary versus commission, would help clarify YouTube's corporate rationale for the reader?
Oh, absolutely. I enthusiastically agree with that. That analogy instantly clarifies the dynamic.
It just makes it so relatable.
It does. It takes a complex algorithmic policy and translates it into an economic reality that every single person understands intuitively.
Companies use commission structures to drive relentless hustle and high volume.
And they use salaries to retain talent.
Exactly, to build a stable foundation. If the writer weaves that salary versus commission concept into the structure of that section, it completely eliminates the narrative disconnect. The reader immediately understands not just what YouTube is doing, but exactly why they are doing it.
It also explains why YouTube isn't afraid of burning out those shorts creators.
Right, because in a commission-only sales floor, turnover is just expected. You burn out the bottom performers and reward the top producers.
But you protect your salaried management, the long-form creators. Exactly. Structuring the article around this concept brings a massive sense of cohesion to the whole middle section of the piece.
It really bridges that gap. But that leaves us with a big question, which leads to our final critique.
Which is?
If YouTube is pushing creators onto this commission-based treadmill for shorts, what happens to the mid-size creators who inevitably fall off?
Right, because they will.
Yeah, and the author touches on this at the very end with these alternative revenue streams, but the concluding analysis of YouTube's alternative revenue streams successfully identifies the ambiguity of the new programs, but ends on a passive note rather than a forward-looking one.
It really does just kind of fizzle out at the end there.
It does. The weakness is that the article ends by pointing out the catch with the sweeteners, YouTube shopping, brand deals, and trend bonuses, noting that the details are coming later, and it concludes that the math is going to get harder before it gets clearer.
Which, to be fair, is accurate.
It is accurate, but it leaves the targeted audience without any analytical perspective on how to interpret or prepare for these vague promises before the February 2027 deadline. It's just very passive.
Yeah, the ending of a piece like this is the lasting impression. Ending on a note of, well, we just have to wait and see what YouTube announces next. deflates all the tension and urgency that the article just spent so much time building up.
Exactly. So what's the suggestion for the ending?
The text needs to pivot the conclusion to analyze why YouTube is pushing these specific alternatives. The goal is to give the reader an active takeaway regarding the future of platform monetization.
Give me some concrete examples of how the author could do that.
The author could explicitly suggest what these sweeteners imply: a deliberate shift away from passive ad revenue toward active, creator-driven commerce.
Okay, yeah.
The piece could be dramatically improved by adding a sentence or two suggesting that mid-sized creators use the runway until February 2027 to start building direct brand relationships or experimenting with YouTube shopping now.
Instead of just waiting around.
Exactly. Rather than just passively hoping they hit the 10 million view threshold or waiting for YouTube to clarify the rules, they need to take action.
But let me ask you a clarifying question regarding editorial boundaries here.
Sure.
Is there a risk that by suggesting how creators might prepare for 2027, the piece shifts too far from journalistic reporting into, like, consulting?
That's a fair question. It is a line that writers have to navigate carefully, but illuminating the terrain is not the same as giving prescriptive advice.
How so?
Well, it's not about giving direct advice like, you need to go start a merchandise company tomorrow. Rather, it is about analyzing the strategic implications of YouTube's specific choice of sweeteners to provide a complete, robust picture of the changing ecosystem.
Ah, I see. So it's still analysis.
Exactly. Saying, because YouTube is offering X instead of Y, the ecosystem is shifting toward commerce, is highly informed analysis. And honestly, that is exactly what a specialized news audience demands.
That makes a lot of sense. It empowers the reader to make their own decisions based on a complete understanding of the board, rather than leaving them in the dark.
Plus, it contextualizes YouTube within the broader tech landscape, right? If they are pushing creators into direct commerce, it's likely because they want a cut of those physical goods, competing directly with platforms like TikTok Shop or Amazon.
Oh, that's a great point. Connecting those dots gives the reader a massive, forward-looking takeaway that extends far beyond just a simple policy update.
It really does. It makes the piece indispensable.
Okay, let's briefly recap the main points of the critique today. The piece is a strong, factual summary, but it can be elevated by breaking down the daily math of the 10 million view threshold, connecting the long-form and short-form policies to reveal YouTube's broader strategy, and analyzing the implications of the commerce-based sweetener.
Spot on. The raw material is absolutely there.
It is. So to summarize the actionable suggestion, first, add a daily view breakdown to illustrate the scale of the challenge. Second, juxtapose the long-form and short-form entry metrics to highlight platform priority, using that salary versus commission framing we talked about.
Highly recommend that framing.
Yeah, it works so well. And lastly, reframe the conclusion to focus on the shift toward active commerce rather than just the ambiguity of the new rule. Give creators an active takeaway for the 2027 runway.
Exactly. When the platform decides to price the treadmill up to a sprint, the best thing a writer can do is show their readers exactly how fast they need to run.
And where that treadmill is actually plugged in. We warmly invite the listener to implement these structural and analytical tweaks and submit their revised work back in for further review.